Uscreen supports integration with Google Tag Manager. This means that you can track custom events on your website as your users interact with it. In this tutorial, we will teach you how to track a custom event when end users click on the download button of the resource tab of any programs page. The first step is to connect Uscreen with Google Tag Manager. To do this, you can open the admin area, navigate to the Settings tab, and choose Integrations. Then, you can see Google Tag Manager, where you can enter your Google Tag Manager identifier. The second requirement is gathering the measurement ID from Google Analytics 4. You can find it in the Admin tab inside Google Analytics 4. For this tutorial, we are not going to connect Google Analytics directly with Uscreen. Now we can open Google Tag Manager, where we will create two tags. The first tag will be used to connect to Google Analytics 4, while the second one will be used to track our custom event. Here we navigate to the Tags tab. To create a new tag, we can click on the New button. Then we select Tag Configuration and we choose Google Analytics GA4 configuration. You can see that it requests the measurement ID which we gathered previously from Google Analytics 4. We will copy and paste it here. We'll need to name our new tag and add a trigger. However, we can do it later because as we click on the Save button, we'll be prompted to choose a trigger. And later we can also name our tag. When we click on Add Trigger, you'll have three options. You will choose one depending on your Google Tag configuration. For this tutorial, I will use All Pages. When we click the Save button again, we'll have the option to rename our tag. I'll keep the default name, which is Google Analytics GA4 configuration. Now our first tag has been created. We have connected Google Analytics 4 and Google Tag Manager, and we can start adding our variables. In the Variables tab, we will use the built-in variables. Let's click on the Configure button. Here we have a list of available built-in variables. For this tutorial, we will only use three variables. The first one will be the page URL, which will allow us to track the page where the button is located. Then we scroll down and select Click Classes and click URL. Classes will allow us to locate the button in the code, and the URL will allow us to identify which file has been downloaded. Now we are ready to add our trigger. Click on the New button and select Trigger Configuration. This trigger will be used to fire an event every time a user clicks on the Download button. For now, we will create a generic click event, but we will fine-tune it later. When we click on Trigger Configuration, we will select the option that says Click All Elements. Here you can see that this trigger fires on all clicks. Generic setup of this trigger will allow us to gather some data about the button. In another step of this tutorial, we will get back to this and make it more specific. We can name this trigger Click Download button. Then click on Save. Now that we have our variables and trigger, we can proceed to create the second tag. This tag will be slightly different from the first one. We'll follow the same procedure, but this time we will select the GA4 event. Here we see Configuration tag. We can use the one we set up just before. Let's fill the event name. We will call it Download Resource, and we can use the same name for our tag. Here you can see that the triggering is still empty, but as we click on the Save button, we will be prompted to add one. Select the trigger that we created on the previous step. Click Download button. Then save the changes. We have completed the first part of this tutorial. We can submit the updates in our workspace. After the publication, we can test our tag and make sure everything is working well to fine-tune it in the next step. Click on the Submit button. Then we can add a descriptive name. I will call it Connect Google Analytics 4. Then publish the changes and go back to the workspace. Now we can test it. Before we proceed, it's important to note that you must install the Google Tag Assistant, which is a web browser extension. We will leave the link to download it in the description of this video. Now let's click on Preview. This will open the Google Tag Assistant. If necessary, fill in your website URL, then click the Connect button. This will open our website in a new window. On the bottom right corner, we can see that the Tag Assistant has been connected. All events will be tracked here for testing purposes. For example, we can see that the Google Analytics GA4 configuration tag has been fired. That's not the case for download resource. Remember that we created a generic click trigger. This means that every time we click on the website, it will track an event. We will go to the video, click on the Resources tab, and download the file. We can see that our extra file has been downloaded, and the clicks have been tracked in Google Tag Manager. Now we'll refer to the data we collected in our variables and use it to make our events more specific, because we only want to track the download button. For example, I will select some of the classes that belong to the button. I copy them, then I go back to Google Tag Manager, opening the trigger. In our trigger configuration, we previously set it up to fire on all clicks, but now we will make it more specific to fire only on some clicks. We will use the click classes variable, use the contains operator, and paste the classes that our button contains. We can add more conditions and make it even more specific. For example, we can use the file string in the click URL. For our second condition, we will use click URL contains files. And now we can save the changes. Again, every time you make changes on your workspace in Google Tag Manager, you need to publish the updates, otherwise they won't work. I will submit the changes. I add a descriptive name, which will be Add Download Resource button, and click on Publish. We will retest our tags after our updates. Recommend disconnecting the Google Tag Assistant before you start a new test. Close this tab and go back to Workspace. Then click on the Preview button again. After it's reconnected, I go back to our website, open the video, click on the Resources tab, and click on the Download button. When we go back to the Tag Assistant, we will see 2 click events and 1 link click event. You may note that they are different. For example, the link click event did not fire gtm.click. Instead, we will use the second click event that we see here. The download resource event has been tracked. When we click it, we can see that it meets the 3 conditions. For instance, we can see that the click classes contain the classes we inserted. Click URL contains the file string. The event is equal to a gtm.click. Now let's test it in Google Analytics. Open the Reports tab. Select Real Time. You can see it has tracked some activity and counted our download resource event 4 times.